So now you've learned the first three notes, and you're well on your way to being a great musician and great saxophonist. But there's something very important before we get right down to the music that we should talk about, just to be aware of while you're playing. And that is tuning. Playing in tune is very important to sounding good. So we're going to work a little bit right now on how to tune and what it means to be in tune. Now, when I play a note, a specific note, let's just take a note like the note B. You've learned the note B. I can play it right in the center, exactly how I'm supposed to play it, with good airstream, good tone, and make my embouchure set perfectly and make it sound really good. Now I'll say that that note's in tune. Now if I'm not perfectly in tune, I might be lower than that note. The sound of that note will be a little too low, and that's called being flat. Let me demonstrate that. First I'll play it in tune, then I'll play it flat. So did you hear how that second note sounded lower? Maybe not as good either. So it's the same note, it's a B, but it's a little bit flat. Doesn't sound as in tune as the first note. If I were a little bit high above the pitch, it would be called playing sharp. So let me demonstrate that again. Now I have the in tune B. Now sharp would be above the pitch. So it's above the pitch, just a little bit above the pitch. It's easier to play flat on the saxophone than it is to play sharp because you just loosen your chops, your jaws, and then you end up playing flat. Now when I'm playing in a band, I have to make sure that I'm playing in tune with other people. So I have to really use my ears and listen. Does it sound in tune? Do I sound lower or do I sound higher? Now there are several things you can do, which I'm going to touch on in just 1 minute after I demonstrate one more time playing in tune versus playing out of tune. I'm going to play the tune Mary Had a Little Lamb, and I'm going to play the top note out of tune the first time, then in tune the second time, and I want you to hear the difference. Oh, that sounded bad. That was out of tune. That note was flat. So that's being out of tune on a specific note. That top note was out of tune. Let me do it again in tune. Now one thing that can make a note in tune or out of tune can be the way your embouchure is. If you loosen your embouchure too much or if you tighten too much on a specific note, it can make the note out of tune. So try to keep a steady embouchure to play in tune. Now when you play in a band, you have to be playing in tune with all the other instruments. So again, like I said before, you have to listen to those instruments and you have to really use your ear to decide if you're in tune or you're flat or you're sharp. Generally speaking, when you're in your band, everyone should tune up in the beginning, usually to a concert B flat, which is your G. Now what we do, we listen to the other instruments. We listen to the piano, we listen to the other instruments, and we try to match that pitch. And if we sound a little bit flat or a little bit sharp, we have to adjust. How do we adjust? Well, if I'm flat, I need to push my mouthpiece farther in. I need to actually crank it in just a little bit further onto the cork, further in, and then that will bring my pitch a little bit higher so I can blend in with the other instruments. And if I'm a little bit sharp, I do the opposite. I pull out, and I always want to check it again after I tune. If you hear waves in the sound while you're tuning, that means you're out of tune and you're either flat or sharp. One way you can tell if you're flat or sharp is to loosen your jaw a little bit. You loosen your chops, and that will make the pitch a little bit flat, and you can tell whether or not you're flat or sharp. If it sounds better when you loosen your jaws, then you're probably a little bit sharp. If it sounds worse, then you're probably a little bit flat. The last thing I'll talk about is if you want to tune really precise, you can use what we call a tuner, a chromatic tuner. The tuner will tell you on any note you play if you are in tune or out of tune. Oftentimes there's a needle, it stands straight up if you're in perfect tune, and if you're flat, it stands a little bit to the left, it stands a little bit to the right if you're sharp. And you can tell whether or not you're flat or sharp. And you tune just the same way I was telling you before when you're in the band. Pushing in or pulling out will make you in tune. And in the long run, if you play in tune, you will sound much better, it will make your tone sound better, you will blend better with the band, and the music will sound better.